She stood quietly near the gate, her uniform crisp, her eyes calm, but not a single person seemed to notice her. Passengers rushed past her, gate agents avoided eye contact. Even crew members walked by, assuming she was just another traveler, waiting for a delayed flight. But what they didn't know was that the woman they were ignoring was one of the most skilled pilots in the Skiza, decorated black woman with years of flight experience under her belt. They didn't see her rank. They didn't see her achievements. All they saw was her skin and her silence. And so, they dismissed her. That is, until the captain walked in. As he scanned the gate area, his eyes locked onto hers. Without hesitation, he called her by her call sign loud and clear. Every head turned. The chatter faded. The air shifted. That one moment silenced assumptions and brought an entire terminal face to face with their own bias. This isn't just a story about a pilot. It's about identity, dignity, and what happens when someone refuses to shrink in the face of invisibility. It's about being overlooked for everything you are until someone finally sees you for everything you've earned. Stay with us, because what happened after that call sign was more than powerful. It reminded everyone in that terminal, and hopefully everyone watching, that respect isn't something you give based on looks, it's something you owe based on truth. Let's take you inside that unforgettable moment. Her name was Jordan Blake, known in the skies as Hawk. She earned that call sign not because it sounded cool, but because of how sharp her instincts were in the cockpit. Hawk didn't just fly planes, she commanded them. From training missions to cross-country flights in rough weather, her calm, under pressure, had saved more than a few crews. Yet on the ground, without a badge or wings visible, people barely looked twice. It wasn't new to her. She had grown used to being underestimated, passed over, or questioned. But today, the weight of it felt heavier. The passengers at Gate 14 were anxious. A delay had everyone on edge. Whispers filled the air, frustration, complaints, blame tossed at the airline. And there she stood, waiting, not to board as a passenger, but to take control of the very jet they were all complaining about. Jordan kept her head high, her back straight, even as people looked through her. One woman actually asked if she was lost. A man tried to hand her his trash. She didn't flinch. She didn't explain. She waited for the moment that always came. When the captain finally arrived, his voice carried across the terminal. Hawk, you're up. Pre-flight's cleared. Silence dropped like a curtain. Someone dropped their coffee. Eyes widened. A few people even gasped. The woman they ignored wasn't just a pilot, she was the one they were trusting to fly them across the country. And for many, that realization was more uncomfortable than turbulence. Jordan walked toward the jet bridge without a word, her boots clicking against the tile. The crew stepped aside quickly now, unsure of what to say. A few gave nods, others looked down, embarrassed. She was used to this shift, the way people went from dismissive to overly polite, the second they realized who she was. But the sting never really faded. One of the newer flight attendants, a young woman named Kayla, followed her with wide eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered, almost afraid to speak. Jordan gave her a small nod, not because she was angry, but because she understood. People didn't know what they didn't see. Back in the terminal, the passengers were buzzing. She's the pilot, someone said under their breath. I've never seen a black female pilot. Another asked if it was a training flight. One older man, seated near the window, shook his head and muttered, hope she knows what she's doing. No one challenged him, not yet. Even those who were silently rooting for Jordan didn't speak up. They weren't sure how. That silence, too, was something she knew well. In the cockpit, Jordan settled into her seat. The captain, an older man named Reeves, gave her a glance that said more than words could. They had flown together before. He knew she was the real deal. But even he hadn't spoken up earlier. Maybe he didn't think he needed to. Or maybe he was waiting to see if the room would figure it out for themselves. Down below, one of the ramp agents, a young black man, watched her through the cockpit. Glasson smiled, holding up a thumbs up. She gave a nod back. It was a small thing, but in that moment, it mattered more than he knew. As the cabin doors closed and the flight attendants began their safety checks, a tense energy lingered in the air. Passengers were unusually quiet, their eyes flickering between their phones and the cockpit door. Some whispered nervously, others stared straight ahead. A few were still processing the moment they saw Captain Reeves step aside to let Jordan take the left seat, the captain's seat. For many, it shattered a picture they didn't even know they had in their heads. In the flight deck, Jordan kept her focus sharp. She ran through her pre-flight checklist like clockwork, every switch and sequence committed to memory. Her voice was steady as she checked in with air traffic control. Outside, storm clouds were starting to form in the distance, and the tower warned of possible turbulence ahead. It was nothing Jordan hadn't handled before, but today, the stakes felt heavier. It wasn't just about flying a plane. It was about flying through judgment, doubt, and the quiet pressure to prove herself every mile of the way. Back in the cabin, a man in row 9 rang the call button. When the flight attendant approached, he asked bluntly, "Is she really flying this thing?" Kayla, now with a bit more confidence, simply replied, "She's one of the best we've got." Still, the tension stayed. A few passengers exchanged nervous glances. Another man tightened his seatbelt. Jordan could feel it all though. The door was closed. the weight of every unspoken thought pressed against her shoulders. The engines roared to life. The runway stretched out ahead. As the plane began to taxi, the storm clouds darkened, and the tower gave final clearance. This was it. All eyes were on the sky. But the real storm was happening inside that cabin, and Jordan was about to fly straight through it. As the aircraft lifted off the runway and climbed through thick clouds, Jordan's hands stayed firm on the controls. The winds were stronger than expected, and turbulence hit hard right after takeoff. The seatbelt sign stayed on as the plane shook, and a few passengers gasped, gripping their armrests tighter. In row 12, a child began to cry, and somewhere near the back a nervous flyer whispered, "This doesn't feel right." The tension wasn't just from the weather anymore, it was trust, fear, and doubt wrapped into every bump. Jordan's voice came over the intercom. Calm and measured. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've hit some choppy air. Please remain seated. We're in full control and will be above this shortly." Her tone was solid, but she knew this wasn't just a routine announcement. It was a challenge. Every second in the air now felt like a test, not just of skill, but of how much confidence people had in her. And then came the twist. An alert lit up on the console, a malfunction warning, minor, but enough to change the flight plan. Jordan and Reeves exchanged a look. The pitot sensor reading was off. Not critical, but it meant they'd have to switch to manual backup systems for certain readings. It was rare and complicated, especially in weather like this. Reeves leaned in. "You sure you want to handle this one?" She didn't even blink. "I've got it," she said. But what neither of them knew was that down in the cabin, a former commercial pilot was now watching closely, ready to make a decision of his own, and not one the crew had prepared for. The turbulence grew stronger as the plane approached its cruising altitude. Jordan's fingers moved swiftly over the controls, switching to manual systems and adjusting flight paths with perfect timing. Reeves watched, impressed but silent. In the cabin, the mood shifted between fear and awe. The man from row 14, former pilot, buckled against instructions and made his way to the front. Kayla stepped into his path. "Sir, you need to sit down," she said firmly. He ignored her. He knocked on the cockpit door. "I need to speak with the captain," he called out. Inside, Jordan heard the commotion and calmly asked Reeves to handle it. The door cracked open slightly. The man leaned in. "I used to fly for over 20 years. You've got a system warning and rough weather. Are you sure she can handle this?" Reeves didn't hesitate. "She's not handling it. She's mastering it." At that moment, the aircraft broke through the clouds into clear sky. The turbulence faded, and the instruments stabilized. Jordan's calm voice returned on the intercom. "We've cleared the storm. We'll be arriving on time. Thank you for your patience." A quiet round of applause broke out in the cabin, spreading row by row, but just as things seemed to settle, another unexpected twist came over the radio. An emergency reroute, due to a medical emergency on a connecting flight. Air traffic control asked if their plane could divert and assist by landing early at a smaller airport. Jordan didn't hesitate. "We'll take it," she said. The passengers didn't know it yet, but their pilot, the woman they'd once ignored, was about to save more lives than just theirs. With calm precision, Jordan guided the plane toward the small regional airport. The crew prepared for an unexpected landing, and medical personnel were already waiting on the ground. The passengers watched, quiet and tense, as the aircraft ascended smoothly under Jordan's steady hands. Within minutes, the plane touched down as gently as if nothing had happened. The emergency transfer was quick, and thanks to the decision to divert the patient from the